Have you ever felt it? That strange, silent shift inside you. Nothing around you has changed. The same people, the same routine, the same walls, the same conversations, and yet something feels different. You wake up, and for a moment, everything feels unfamiliar. Not the world, but yourself. You smile like you always do. You speak like everything is fine. You move through your day as if nothing is wrong. But deep down, there's a weight, a quiet tension in your chest, a feeling you can't explain, and the more you try to ignore it, the louder it becomes. It's not anxiety in the usual sense. It's not sadness either. It's something deeper, something older, almost like a part of you is trying to speak. But you've spent so long silencing it, you don't recognize its voice anymore, so you distract yourself. You scroll, you laugh, you stay busy, because stopping means feeling, and feeling means facing something you're not ready to see. But here's the truth nobody tells you. It's there to wake you up, because something inside you is shifting. Something you've buried for years is beginning to rise, and once it starts, you can't go back. So the real question is, are you ready to meet the version of yourself you've been avoiding? At first, it's subtle. You start losing interest in things that once made you feel alive. Conversations feel shallow. People you once connected with now feel distant. Even your own goals begin to feel empty. And that scares you, because if these things don't matter anymore, then what does? So you try to hold on, you force yourself to care. You tell yourself, maybe I'm just tired. Maybe I'm overthinking. But deep down, you know, something is breaking. And that's when the fear begins. Not fear of losing something outside of you, but fear of losing who you thought you were, because your identity, the version of yourself you've built over years, is starting to crack. And when that happens, it feels like you're falling apart. But what if you're not? What if you're actually falling into something deeper? You see, most people spend their lives building a version of themselves that the world accepts, a version that is safe, predictable, liked, but it's not real, not completely. There are parts of you that never made it into that version, parts that were too intense, too emotional, too different. So you hid them, you pushed them into the dark, and over time you forgot they were even there. But now they're coming back, not to destroy you, but to complete you. And that's why it feels uncomfortable, because you're not just changing, you're becoming whole. But the question is, can you handle the truth of who you really are? There's a side of you that you don't talk about, not with others, not even with yourself. It's the part that feels anger when you're supposed to feel calm, the part that feels jealousy when you're supposed to feel happy for others, the part that wants things you're afraid to admit. This is your shadow, and most of your life you've been taught to reject it, to be good, to be right, to be acceptable. So you learn to hide anything that didn't fit that image. But the shadow doesn't disappear, it waits, quietly, patiently, and the longer you ignore it, the stronger it becomes, until one day it doesn't stay hidden anymore. It starts showing up in your reactions, your thoughts, your dreams, in the way you suddenly feel things you can't explain, and it terrifies you because it doesn't feel like you. It always was. And here's the part most people never understand. Your shadow is not your enemy. It's the part of you that carries your pain, your suppressed desires, your unmet needs, your truth. And when you finally face it, really face it, everything changes. Because you stop running, you stop pretending, You stop living half a life, but that moment when you first see your shadow clearly, it can feel overwhelming, like standing in front of a mirror that shows not just your face, but your soul. And you have to ask yourself, do you have the courage to look? There comes a moment when the life you built no longer fits you. The roles you played, the image you maintained, the identity you protected, it all begins to feel fragile, like it could shatter at any moment, and in many ways it does. This is where most people panic. They try to fix it, to rebuild the old version of themselves, to go back to what felt normal. But it never works, because once you've seen the truth, you can't unsee it. Your ego, the part of you that says, "This is who I am," starts to dissolve. And it feels like death. Not physical death, but psychological death. The loss of certainty, the loss of control, the loss of everything familiar. And in that space, you feel lost, alone, like you don't belong anywhere anymore. But this is not the end, it's the beginning. Because the ego isn't meant to be destroyed, it's meant to be transformed, stronger, more honest, more aligned with who you truly are. But to get there, you have to let go of who you were. And that's the hardest part, because letting go feels like losing yourself, when in reality, it's the only way to find yourself. So now you stand at a crossroads. Hold on to the old version of you, or step into the unknown. And the question becomes, what are you willing to lose to finally be real? Section 5, the loneliness of transformation. This is the part nobody prepares you for. The loneliness. Not the kind where you're physically alone, but the kind where you feel disconnected from everyone around you. You start noticing things you didn't see before: patterns, pretenses, surface level connections. And suddenly, it all feels exhausting. You crave something deeper, something real. But not everyone is on that path. And that's when the distance begins. Friends don't understand you anymore. Conversations feel forced. Even people you love feel like strangers. And it hurts, because part of you wants to go back, to fit in again, to feel normal again, but you can't, because you've changed, and deep down, you know this path is necessary, even if it's painful, because growth, real growth, requires separation, not forever, but long enough for you to hear your own voice again, to understand your own truth, to rebuild yourself from the inside out. And in that silence, in that space where it feels like you've lost everything, you begin to discover something unexpected: yourself, not the version shaped by others, but the one that exists underneath it all. And for the first time, you start to feel real. But the question is, can you endure the loneliness long enough to meet that version of you? Something strange happens when you stop running from yourself. You begin to feel things more deeply. Your desires become clearer, not the ones society gave you, but the ones that come from within. And they don't always make sense. They don't always feel safe. In fact, they often scare you because they challenge everything you thought you wanted. You might feel drawn to a different path, a different life, a different version of yourself. And that creates conflict, because part of you wants to follow it and another part wants to stay where it's comfortable. This is where most people turn back. They silence those desires. They choose safety over truth. But if you've come this far, you know that won't work anymore. Because once you hear your inner voice clearly, ignoring it becomes unbearable. And that's where transformation truly begins. Not when everything is certain, but when you choose to move forward anyway, even with fear, even with doubt, even with no clear answers, because something inside you knows this is the path, and every step you take brings you closer to a life that actually feels like yours. But it requires something from you: courage, honesty, and the willingness to trust yourself even when it's uncomfortable. So now the question becomes, will you follow what feels true or what feels safe? There isn't always a dramatic turning point, no sudden explosion, no perfect moment where everything becomes clear. Instead, it happens quietly: a decision, a realization, a shift in how you see yourself. You stop seeking approval. You stop chasing validation. You stop pretending to be someone you're not, and in that moment, everything changes. Not because your life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you do. Not perfect in the sense of flawless, but complete, whole. You begin to accept every part of yourself: the light, the dark, the broken, the healing, and something inside you settles. For the first time, you're not fighting yourself anymore. You're not hiding. You're not running. You're just here. And that presence, that honesty, that alignment, it changes how you move through the world, how you speak, how you love, how you live. Because now you're not living to survive, you're living to be real. And that is where true transformation begins. But here's the final question: if your life is about to change, will you resist it? Or will you become it? Outro: the truth you can't ignore. Maybe this feeling inside you, this discomfort, this quiet shift, isn't something to fear. Maybe it's something to listen to, because the life you've been living was never meant to be permanent. It was a phase, a chapter, a version of you that brought you this far, but not where you're meant to stay. And now you're being called into something deeper, something more honest, more real, more you. But it requires letting go of who you thought you were, letting go of what no longer fits, letting go of the fear that has been holding you back. Because the truth is, your life is about to change, not because something external is coming to save you, but because something internal is finally waking up. And once it does, there's no going back. So don't run from it. Don't silence it. Don't pretend it isn't happening. Because this moment right here might be the beginning of everything you've been searching for. And maybe, just maybe, the part of yourself you've been afraid to face is the very thing that will set you free.